Hey everyone, I want to thank you for tuning in to one of EPARTRADE's Race Industry Now Tech webinars. If you're a part of the racing industry or you're just passionate about racing tech, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel so you never miss a new episode. Good morning, good afternoon from wherever you're joining us, and welcome to Race Industry Now. This is episode 612 featuring MPD Racing and Ti22 Performance. My name is Brad Gillie. I'll be your host today. We have Judy Keene and Andrea Brake joining us as well. Before we get started, I do want to once again thank our awesome sponsors: Ferrea Racing Components, ARP, Fifth Third Bank, Crower Cam, C-Tech Manufacturing, and Peak. We truly appreciate their participation and your participation here with EPARTRADE. Before we get our webinar started, Judy, let me turn it over to you.
Thank you, Brad. We are so fortunate today to have MPD Racing and Ti22 Performance. Obviously, we know them as part of the motorsport family, and they are such a cornerstone of our industry. Quality products, great service, and just good people. Andrea?
Thank you, Judy. Yeah, both MPD Racing and Ti22, they're really well-respected companies, both in the sprint car and motorsports world, under Motor State Distributing umbrella, who I've known for a very long time, and just what a great facility I've been out there to visit. And like Judy said, really great people. So we're looking forward to having them on today. Go ahead, Brad.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Andrea. Thank you very much, Judy. We'll talk to you all coming up here in just a short while. And really looking forward to talking about sprint car racing, especially considering this weekend I'll be at Las Vegas Motor Speedway, and we'll absolutely take in the high limits race there, among many others throughout the year. But this week's webinar is titled Meeting Safety Trends in Open Wheel Racing by MPD Racing and Ti22 Performance. And it features Eddie Smith, the category manager for open wheel racing products at Motor State Distributing, and the brand manager for MPD Racing and Ti22 Performance. Eddie, welcome. How you doing today?
Good. Thanks for inviting me in.
Oh, look, we are thrilled, and especially when we start talking about safety innovations and the great products that you guys have when it comes to sprint car racing. This is fantastic. I know you'll have a PowerPoint as part of what we're doing here today, so at any point you're ready to get that started, just say the word and we'll get your screen sharing and everything. But want to know a little bit more about you. You're not just a great distributor of awesome products. You are a racer yourself.
Yeah, back in the day, since retired. But yeah, I started racing when I was pretty young. Around 17 years old was the first time that I had the opportunity to step into a sprint car. It was a family-owned car that was driven by a family member who was injured. And I got to step in and I started my racing career then. And ever since, it's just I've just been embedded in sprint car racing.
Yeah, well, look, this is a hard, if not impossible, thing to get away from, right? I mean, this is all what we love.
It truly is. It really is. It's hard to step away from it. Even though I'm not racing, it's still, selling products, building products, and just being involved. And the group of the people around sprint car racing is one big family. I mean, they're all friends, so it's hard to walk away.
Yeah, I totally understand that. Well, look, whenever we walk away, we transition into something else. Fortunately for you, it's transitioning into something that really offers a lot to the open wheel and sprint car community. What inspired you to get into what you're doing now, and how has that racing experience guided you?
So that's kind of a funny story. We talked a little bit about Motor State Distributing. That's our parent company. And I was racing sprint cars locally here around the Motor State Lane Automotive area. And I had just talked with George Lane, our founder, a few times about, racing. And he would always come down and we'd have chit chat. And over time, we just kind of talked about some of the things that at Motor State, what they were doing, Lane Automotive, and, selling products. And it intrigued me. And I thought, this would be a way to stay involved on top of, I could work in the industry and try to continue to race. So it was a good fit for me since I lived locally and I considered the Lane's family friends. So it worked out great for me.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, look, I'm always a big fan. In part of my background, I'm actually sitting at Texas Motor Speedway today. I ran our dirt track back in the early 2000s when we were running World of Outlaws shows and dirt late models and flat track motorcycles and all of that. Subsequently ran the Legends car program and dealership here in Texas. And I always used to tell people, your first money should always be spent on safety. And a lot of us always want to go fast. There's no doubt about that. And the evolution of where sprint cars are right now, there's been a huge push for both safety and standardization, which is just a great thing to see over the past few years. So were there any specific incidents that might have triggered some of these changes?
I was trying to think about that a little bit earlier. I don't think there was one major incident that I can remember, but it's just that, being at the racetrack, always being at the racetrack, you would see these things, or attending like World of Outlaw races. So they were always front and center. And since I was working in the industry and working with these manufacturers, I would always, kind of take a look at what had happened, or, what we could do better. So not one incident really stands out, but it's just compiling, and just watching it and seeing the same issue over and over with some of the things. But one of the things that really, like I say, I raced for a long time, but the thing that really opened my eyes to the safety side was when my son started racing, and he started racing sprint cars at 14. And at that point, we made sure that he was as safe as possible. So at that point is when I really started looking more into the safety side and working with manufacturers, and little things, like a pad that Butlerville had made years ago, just different little things to keep them safe.
Yeah, and I know some of the products we're going to talk about today, you're going to look at and go, okay, this is obvious. This is why this is a really good thing and an important thing to have. Let's talk about the brands that you work with and how have they adapted with the changes in the sport. I know you guys have launched a number of new products as well, but have there been other changes also?
There's been a lot of other changes over the last few years, and also there's some other changes coming down the pipeline that we're hearing, little things, and we're here to just adapt. So when we hear of these changes, we want to be front and center. We talk with the series, with the World of Outlaws and different series or locally to see how we can help. We're not actually out designing the product front and center. We kind of wait to hear what needs to be fixed in the industry, and then we step up and see if we can help and things like that. So there's a lot of different things that we're hearing and we see, every week, and I'll show you a couple pieces as we go on.
Okay, yeah, that sounds great. Well, let's get really into sprint car racing. Also, I do want to encourage anyone who is participating here live today. If you have a question for Eddie, if you have a question about what we're talking about, please feel free. Just type it into the chat, and we want to absolutely answer your questions. Remember, this is just like us being at a trade show right now, and we're having a back and forth, and we're answering questions. Obviously, a lot of things that we want to talk about for sure. Sprint car racing, kind of the wild, wild west. Look, from the first World of Outlaws race about 50 miles east of where I sit at the old Devil's Bowl Speedway to where we are now, it has kind of been the wild west of motorsports. Do you see some of the changes we're talking about, Eddie, as having a broader impact on the sport or its appeal to fans?
So that was one of the things. I don't think that the fans actually see the safety side of it, because it's all behind the scenes. So I don't think as we make some of these changes and some of these parts that they actually really see it, but the teams realize it, and we talk about trying to keep our drivers safe. But I was standing in Florida this year at Volusia at the start of Speed Weeks, and I was talking to one of the racers about some of the new safety stuff. And he actually said to me, he's like, I'm not a big safety guy, but he said, now that I have my family and kids sitting in the grandstands, he said it made me rethink a couple of these products. So it kind of opened my eyes to that, and I'm like, we just need to continue to work hard and keep people safe, but yet also keep the cost in mind so that we don't, make these things too expensive where people can't get involved or they can't afford to race. So we work a pretty fine line, but I think we do a pretty good job of it.
Yeah, which is just a wonderful thing. Look, we all want to see sprint cars racing hard. It is pretty cool to see them start flipping over, but it's equally as cool to see a driver get out safely and be able to go back and get their car fixed up and continue racing. All right, rules changes, and we know there have been a lot of them over the past few years affecting parity between large funded teams and local operations. How has that helped out?
So I think one of the things that we're seeing is some of the teams that aren't funded, like some of the top racing organizations, they're reaching out to us to see if, I use the term lightly, but maybe like an economy product that they could purchase, or do we know anybody that has some used pieces, or they know that these changes are coming. So I think as some of the racing organizations, we'll talk about this a little bit later, but I think they need to make sure that these teams know that these rule changes are coming down the pipeline. And then going back to the well-funded teams, it's an expense. I mean, for instance, I'm going to show you here in a minute one of the fuel tank mounts. And, these top World of Outlaw teams and high limit teams, they might have 6, 7, 8 fuel cells, and they have to buy 6, 7, 8 of these products. So it's really all the same. If we're a smaller team like myself, we have one car, we bought one. But if we're a bigger team, you have to buy 8. So it's tough. It really is.
One of the other challenges as well, we've talked about World of Outlaws, we've talked about the High Limit Series as well. Those are 2 big national series that race around the country. We have several just amazing regional series. We have a lot of racetracks that have their own rules. We have special events that have their own rules and a lot of different things like that. So when it comes to the differences between all of that, from sanctioning bodies to regional series and racetracks, should there be some more national consistency and safety enforcement? And who do you feel should set the guidelines?
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the things, for instance, at our local racetrack here that we have. When the high limits team showed up at Butler Speedway last year, we had some of the local teams calling and scrambling to get some of these safety pieces that they needed to put on the car. And even though they kind of knew they needed them, but I do feel that we need some kind of overall government, I wouldn't say government, but some kind of like the World of Outlaws or high limits to kind of get together on these products and say, hey, they need to be used across all sanctioning bodies. They need to be used at all the local tracks. So I do believe there needs to be something like that. For instance, that is how over in Australia, that's how it works. They really only have one, sanctioning body, I guess, or the government has some input. Not saying our government should be involved at all, but I'm just saying we should have more parity in our local groups and things like that, because sometimes when I'm at the local races, you do see some pretty crazy things or some sketchy things that could be dangerous, and we need to get that corrected. So
yeah, I agree that there's still way too much that looks like it'll work that's going on out there, as opposed to truly engineered solutions with some research behind them. Well, Eddie, if you want to go ahead and let's get started with the PowerPoint and talk about some of these really cool things that you guys offer, and how these truly should become standard wherever we're racing, whether it's just locally or nationally or anywhere in between.
Yeah, let me see if we can get this pulled up here, and we'll take a look here.
All right, there we go. We can see we can see all of us with your screen shared.
Perfect. There we go. Okay.
There we go. All
right.
We've got that.
So we'll just run through just a quick little PowerPoint that we had here. So one of the things, I'll just talk a little bit about myself. I've been involved in sprint car racing my whole life. I'm actually a 3rd generation racer. So I was pretty much raised at a racetrack. So I was working when I was a racer. I was also working with other manufacturers in the industry before I became an employee at Motor State Distributing, just because 25 years ago, Motor State wasn't carrying all of the products that we were using in a sprint car. So that was one of the things why I think I was a good fit here at Motor State, was so that I could, come in and help them grow the open wheel side of it. Again, like I said, I started racing at the age of 17. I competed until through my late 30s. I raced both 360 and 410 cars. Our family wanted to win a track championship, just so we had that under our belt, which we set out and did in a 410 series locally, which was really good. So, and then, like I said, just firsthand experience with evolving safety and the performance demands of it. Meaning I was working with a lot of the different safety companies on different things for myself. And just even back when driving suits, I worked with one of the driving suit manufacturers when we were sewing arm restraints into the suits. I worked really close with the Hans company. One of the reasons why my career was kind of cut short was I did end up hurting my neck and back in an accident here locally at Hartford Speedway. And it was tough. Again, if I would have had a Hans device, that was right when the Hans devices were coming out, I wouldn't have had those issues. But But again, I've built relationships with all of the manufacturers over the years. I joined MotorState here, Lane Automotive, in 2002. So it's been a long time looking back now, getting close to 25 years. So, but another thing that I've done over the years is selling parts. I've been selling parts to a lot of the top teams, professional racers, crew chiefs, teams. So I work really close with a lot of these crew chiefs and race teams and racers themselves. So I hear firsthand some of the needs, and I understand what these racers need, and kind of from both the manufacturing and from a supplier's standpoint. So a couple quick things here. MPD Racing was founded in 1975 by Jeff Gordon's stepfather. So we ended up buying it around 2018. It was pretty much closed down at the time, but we picked it up. We did see there was a need in the market, mainly for some of the pavement products, pavement sprint car stuff. Ti22 was founded around 2010. They specialized actually in a lot of titanium products, but we went ahead and they were starting to expand when we purchased it in 2016, and now they build products. We build products for pretty much every part of the sprint car. So some of the things, recent rule changes in sprint car racing was the big one was the front end tether requirements. Another one was the 6-point fuel tank mount system, which I'll show you. This year, you have to have your wheel cover bolted on, which I'll show you. And the reason why a lot of these tethers and mounts and things like that are coming about is just mainly to keep these products hooked to the car in a major crash, and keep the products from other drivers running into them, or these parts winding up into the stands. So here's a quick picture of the tethers. These are the MPD tethers that we were talking about. You can see the clamps actually clamp around the front axles, and the tethers actually go back and hook to the chassis. So in a major wreck, in the front clip of the car gets broken off, it will still continue to hold the front axle and tires onto the car. So that does, help keep the debris close in a wreck. This is one of our 6-point tail tank mounts. I'll show you this here in a minute. This here is the kind of the latest piece that everybody's talking about to help hold these big fuel cells on. Again, sprint cars, they burn alcohol, and they have about a 28-gallon tank roughly. So we want to make sure those things stay on the car.
Yeah, for sure. And that fire usually doesn't burn a color that you can see. It's typically clear, so you want to be safe with that.
For sure. And then this is that wheel cover installation kit that I'll show you here in a little bit. That'll help keep these wheel covers on and from leaving the car. And sometimes these things just fly off. It's not even in a wreck. So, but other than that, it's just, we'll talk a little bit about this stuff, some of the standards and some of the things that are going on in sprint car racing. And I'll go ahead and stop sharing. We can have a conversation. I'll show you a couple pieces and parts here.
Yeah, I would love that. I'm always up for show and tell. And before we do that, I just want to remind the viewing audience again, if you have a question about any of the products we're talking about here today, or potential future products or something like that, please feel free to type it into the chat. And I'm sure Eddie would love to have that collaboration with you in conversation as well. So we definitely want to talk about that. So anyway, go ahead, Eddie.
For sure. So one of the first pieces is the wheel cover. So this was a big issue over the years of these things. You can hear they're aluminum, they're pretty heavy, and they're pretty big. In years past, what we were using these, they're kind of small, but just a quick turn fastener that would just hold on with a spring. And originally they were held on with 3 quick turn fasteners that sometimes didn't actually click. And then we decided to go to 6 of them. But what was happening was, now that these races are being so televised, right away they go to change a tire, and what would happen is flow diversion. Our guys, we're down there watching it, and you can see they change a tire and they'll click 1, or they'll click 2, and it's like, okay. So that's why we were having some of the issues of these things flying off just from the speed. So one of the things that we've come up with now in the industry, and a lot of other companies have done it, is also now what we're doing is we're using bolts. So these will actually bolt the wheel cover on, and you can just impact them on, zip them on, and you can use 3 per cover instead of 6. So it is a little quicker to use. And they're very easy to install. This particular piece here, you'll see that just pop rivets into the wheel, into the beadlock ring where the existing spring was. And then this just screws right in. So very easy to use and quick now that everybody's using impact wrenches. So these will definitely help keep wheel covers on the cars. And again, we talked about, some tracks or some series not making you use them. So you can show up at a local track and they're still using maybe 3 Zeus fasteners instead of, or the quick turn fasteners instead of bolting them on. So that goes back to what we were talking about having, everybody using the same rules. So one of the other things that we had, I didn't show on our presentation was, for instance, this is a rear torsion arm. This here hooks into the torsion bar, and this piece here hooks into the bird cage. What has happened in the past, these are made out of aluminum. And what was happening is when these cars are wrecking, the crashes are so violent, they're actually breaking right here. Mm-hmm. They're just breaking off. And what that does is that allows the rear end to just flop around in there freely, to bang into the seat bar. So there is another company also making them in titanium, which is great, but we tried to cut the cost a little bit by making them out of just like a 4130 steel. So we've been doing pretty good with these. It will keep the rear end in the car. So that will help in a case of a crash. But the next thing was, here is the fuel tank mount that we were talking about. It's just a simple little part here. You'll see this flat piece here. This piece here will actually go inside the fuel cell right up front behind the seat bar. And then these pieces here bolt on. And then what we have is we just have 2 clamps, and these clamps hook to the butt bar of the seat bar, and you just clamp it on. So that holds that fuel cell on with 2 more pickup points. That's why it's called a 6-point tail tank mount. So I think this is a really good safety feature for the sprint cars. And I'll share with you, one of the things that I heard about this mount was, we're starting to hear a lot of these racers push back on us a little bit, saying that the manufacturers making these parts, like the fuel cells and different like wheel covers, they need to start integrating this stuff into what they're building. That way they don't have to contact a third party and purchase, these safety pieces. So I kind of started hearing that a little bit this year, and I didn't think much about it, but talking with some of these teams, it makes sense. So, but I do truly think that some of these manufacturers like Tail Tank, they are working on some things. So I think we'll see that. But for now, this is an easy fix to help hold that tank on. So before, those fuel cells were held on by 4 quarter-inch bolts, this size right here. That's what we were holding those tanks on with. And the fuel hose, the Dash 12 fuel hose. So this should be a helpful fix to keep those fuel cells from landing in the stands or a driver hitting it and catching fire.
Yeah, and I like that too. And I don't know, Eddie, if this is still the same way, but, I know coming to race here at Texas, Carlton Reamers would always say, hey, we're running 40, 50 laps around this, the 3/8 mile track or whatever. Use your big fuel tanks here today, because this is a part that people are regularly swapping out depending on size of the track, amount of laps run, and everything, which goes even more to, the more you're changing something, the more opportunity you might have to not get it on right or be too fast about it.
Absolutely. And one of our sister companies really worked on this and really helped design it and build it. And this is very quick to help change it. So they did put a lot of effort into this when they were building it and designing it. So that does take some of that worry out. But yeah, there is, another part that we talked about in that little presentation was the MPD tethers. Ti22 makes tethers. There's other companies out there now that have some tethers. But the first year we were in Volusia a few years ago when they all had to have tethers, we watched a violent wreck coming off turn 2, and it was the first year that they mandated those tethers. And still, I was just talking with a colleague earlier today talking about that wreck, and the whole front of the car is completely ripped off, and the only thing keeping that front end in was those tethers. And when he crashed going into 2, potentially that front end could have been in the stands, or somebody could have hit it, another driver with all that metal and debris. So they do truly work. Again, we just got to continue to focus on the safety, especially as, our drivers are getting younger, the cars are getting faster. One of the things that, we hear now that with all the streaming, we hear so many different commentators talking about weekly racing. the track, when you go out to qualifying hot lap, the track is wicked fast, right? Everybody, pretty much single file. But now, we can watch Flow, and they might go to Las Vegas, and lap 15 of the feature, you hear the commentator, Johnny Gibson, oh my goodness, he's run the fastest lap of the night. And it's like, this is insane how, the cars are just so fast, and there's so many fast cars. In the past, we had 5 or 6 really good guys, but now, you show up, they're all fast. They truly.
Yeah, I would agree. The quality of the competition these days is just incredible, which really makes it great for the race fans. But, in addition to the safety aspects of a lot of these things, especially when you talk about the tethers, I think from the track promoter side as well, not only do you want everyone safe, that's priority one, you want to keep the show moving as well. And a lot of these tracks don't necessarily have the track staff or facilities to efficiently go out there and start picking up parts on the racetrack and cleaning them up. The quicker we can keep it going, the better show it is for everyone, the more people that show up in the grandstands.
Yeah. Another thing, too, talking about that was, now all the sprint cars, well, in the top series, have the fire bottles. They have some kind of fire suppression system on board, which does help. Especially at some of these bigger tracks where the safety crew is really spread out. And again, we go back, we might go to our local track and they don't have to run it. So, but that was another big thing, was bringing in the fire suppression systems to these cars, which help. And talking about safety, here at Motor State Distributing this last weekend, we had what was called the Safety Summit. And what it was is, on a Saturday, we bring in a lot of the manufacturers that work, and safety manufacturers that do suits and helmets and gloves. And they were all here to talk with people and kind of train them a little bit, and let them know, really, how dangerous this is, and that we need to make sure that they're taking every precaution. So it's something that we do focus on. And I hope everybody is focusing on safety. So Darren Pittman was here with his seats, and Butler built seats were here, and another thing they were talking about was just even how to mount the seats. We forget about people mounting seats. I was at a friend's shop. They had a pavement race in Florida a couple weeks ago, and I went to the Dave Steele Memorial Race, and I looked at the guy's car, and the way the seat was mounted in it, it was mounted with bumper bolts. Not sprint car bumper bolts, car bumper bolts. So we just need to continue to focus on safety. And what you're doing here with this webinar, I think, we need to make sure that we all do share this out, and we put some emphasis on this show.
I like that. Question from the chat, and please feel free to type it in if you have one. Jim Granger says, what are the most common safety mistakes you see at local tracks?
Oh, that's a good one. And I'll tell you, easy. It's mounting the seatbelts. It's crazy on how the way some people don't understand how to weave the seatbelts through the webbing, through the mounts in the back. They spread them out too far, or potentially run them over a bolt. Or when they put them on the sidebars, the seat bars, when they pull them up, they're on angles. So the main thing there is, like on a sprint car, a few years ago, and I don't remember who it was. I don't know if it was Dave Sharpley or somebody actually had a diagram where they had like a diagram on how to mount the seatbelts on the perfect angles. And I think I need to personally look that up and see if we can share that in our world somewhere. But that is by far the biggest mistake. When my son was racing a mini sprint years ago, we got to the racetrack, and the young lady that was parked next to us that was going to race for the first time, she got in her car, and her dad thought that the rib supports that sit down in the car in between, he thought you put your arms inside those. So we took her under our wing, and we helped him out as much as we could. But mainly it's seatbelt location. To me, that's one of the big things.
Yeah, I agree. And look, the further back that is mounted from where it goes over your shoulders, the greater chance it has to stretch. And, back in the day, it was like, here, mount them on the floor, bring them all the way up and bring them over, instead of just, the more direct path you can take to the top of your shoulders, the much better it is. But you're right. And it's not like all of these come in kits with a set of instructions saying exactly how to do this. Now, I get you buy a box of seatbelts and they tell you, what to do, but that is a big thing of going back to what we said before. Sometimes there's too much of that looks right. That looks like the way it should be done, as opposed to understanding exactly how.
For sure. And for instance, like if you call Ti22 or an MPD Racing or even Motor State and you ask like a sprint car question, a lot of times I might I might take the call. And sometimes when people ask me some questions and I'm like, wow, you should know that. But then I have to step back and say, maybe they're just getting into it or they've never been in a sprint car. So I've actually trained myself a little bit better to start at the beginning. Like, why are we asking the questions? What can we do to help you? So, but you are right. I mean, we need to have some way of making sure that the seat belts or diagrams, just like you were talking, if they're too long, they're too short, it can be very dangerous.
Yeah, and you touched on this, just moving too fast when preparing your race car. Look, I'm sure a lot of people have a story of, man, I was doing great, I was running third, and then I realized I forgot to put gas in it. Okay, that's like a fun, simple story, and it's happened to a lot of racers for sure. But if you're forgetting to put gas in it, even if that happens once, maybe you forgot to check this or tighten that. You mentioned Zeus fasteners, on wheel covers. I think to myself, man, those are great for body mounts, but that's a lot to rely on, with a wheel that's spinning around fast. But, with cordless impacts and everything that we have now, it just makes so much more sense to put them on with your mounting kit than what may have been done in the past. Just even something as simple as that.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, the safety manufacturers that were here for our safety summit, they are truly working on improving their products or different ways. One of the things, there was a seatbelt manufacturer that was here, and what they had done is they now sew a small magnet in the end of the seatbelt, like where they come together to latch. That way, when you're taking the seatbelt off, you can just like stick them to the roll bars so you can find them. And the reason why I found that so intriguing was when my son was racing, I walked up behind the car, he rolled in, and I walked up behind the car, and the crotch strap was hanging between his legs, and he didn't put it on. And I questioned him on it, and he told me he couldn't find it. So these are just different things that they're doing to help, the racers. And that's just a little thing, just to kind of keep the seatbelts where you can get to them, make them easier to get to. And, so you don't forget to latch all 5 or all 6, depending on what kind of race car you're racing. So these safety manufacturers are doing a really good job of continuing to improve their products, which is really good.
Yeah, I like that. It's about standard operating procedure. And if you repetitively always do the same things, you're going to be in a much better spot. Bob Mantell says in the chat, the SFI website has a good harness install guideline sheet, which is great because instead of looking for, here's a good place, utilizing the resources that are out there to say, this may look like a good place, but this is really the right place.
Yes. So. Yeah, and Bob has a wealth of knowledge. He would know. So that is awesome. Thanks for giving us that information, because we'll definitely use it, and I will actually look it up for myself too. So thanks, Bob.
Mm-hmm. What do you say to the racer, Eddie, when they start talking about things and one of the things they look at and go, well, this is going to add weight, or boy, if I spent this money trying to go faster, this is going to help me get more. Maybe when I win that big purse next week, I'll start getting this. Just look, we're all full of excuses, right? We're racers, but what do you say to that?
So I just tell them we need to make sure that we can make it to the next race. We have to stay safe so we can make it to the next race. That's the biggest thing. And especially like when it comes to the head and neck devices and things like that, that's a no-brainer. Nowadays, it's like you have to start, when you build a race car, you have to start with the safety side of it. Like if we're in a late model modified or anything, those cars, they build a chassis, and they pretty much build those from the inside out. They start in a cockpit and they just build it out. And that's what we need to do, as racers. We just need to make sure that we stay safe and don't cut any corners when it comes to that. Like if you think the bolt's too short, buy it, let's make sure we get the right hardware. Or if it's too long and it's rubbing or something, let's make sure that we get it, the correct piece in. So another thing too is these racers, depending on what they're racing or where they race, not just talking about sprint cars, but you need to make sure that the fire suits and the fire protection that you're buying is good for what you're doing. Sprint cars, we need 2-3 layers, we need the long underwear and things like that. So, but we need to make sure at all levels that you are buying the appropriate fire retardant suit for what you're doing.
Yeah, that is very true because every series is different. Look, we see top fuel drag racers go out there and look like they can go play in the ice of Alaska or something like that. But
Mhm.
nowadays on the NASCAR side, and we've sort of, I don't know if the right word is devolved, because I think these suits have evolved. But instead of say a three piece or 3-layer suit, things seem to be thinner, comfortable, and things like that. But depending on what you're doing, you can't compromise. And I think that's probably the more important thing.
That's right. Another thing that really opened my eyes was 2 years ago, I had the opportunity to visit the FIA headquarters in France, and I've also been to the OMP factory in Italy, and they were showing us the different ways of testing the materials and things like that, and how it was baking, and it just how intense these fires are. And I didn't realize, it's not just a flame, it's heat and all the different things. So one of the things that I had when I was younger, when I was racing, was I had a small fire in the side of my car. We had a fuel shutoff leaking. And the only way that I actually knew that the car was on fire was I went to pull a tear off and it was melted. And I knew at
Oh,
that
wow.
point we had some kind of issue going on. But luckily, looking back, because I did work at Motor State Distributing and I was working with all the different, uniform manufacturers, I did have the right stuff on, and luckily I didn't sustain any injuries from it. So we just got to make sure that we're wearing the right proper gear.
Yeah, yeah. To your point, you didn't even know the fire was there until
Mhm.
you did. But then once you do, how quick can you get out of the car? And if you've got a suit rated for, however many seconds before you start to experience burns, you've already burnt up some of those, no pun intended, some of
Yeah.
those seconds in something like that. So that's a
And
big
going
thing.
and going back to sprint car, so what they did this year also was the left side opening where the driver gets into the car. They've actually, the World of Outlaws mandated a larger opening for that. Now, granted, some of the drivers are smaller and they can hop right in and hop right out, but there's other drivers that are taller that might have trouble getting in and out when there's a fire, or if there's an accident, when the safety crew is trying to help them out. So I thought that was a really good idea because, I'm a little bit taller. I could never have a door on a car like that. But I thought that was a pretty good idea to make sure that they could, help the driver. The driver could get out in a hurry.
Yeah, and that's assuming you're upright with nothing bent and not upside down with something else
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
compromised. Brian Neeb put this out there, and this is totally true. And look, I think we all do it in our home lives. And, I'm a certified YouTube mechanic myself, but he said, let everyone listening, there are numerous videos online that will show the proper way to do things, unlike how it was back when I started. Thankful for all the guidance I received. For me, and I totally agree with it. I do the same thing. I usually try and find 2 or 3 of them just to make sure people are saying the same thing. I'd hate to land on the wrong one.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. That's one of the things. Going back to, we were just talking about some of the safety, like the openings on the side of the car, that brought back another safety product, was the rock screens in front of the driver.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of drivers do not want to run them, and it's, and some of the rocks and debris and that they get hit with. And so, even though we're a manufacturer, we build rock screens. I would recommend that everybody runs a rock screen, and they use the proper clamps to clamp them on. So, but yeah, now that we've talked about this, and some of the people in the chat have talked about using some YouTube, now I do have to look on YouTube on some of these different maybe some sprint car videos and that, and how to's. I mean, I do follow a lot of the social medias and some of these influencers, watching them do it today, and they do a really good job. But I do need to scour the YouTube a little bit myself.
Yeah, and that's great. Maybe there's the next thing to become a good resource for that, something like that. I am curious, Eddie. So we talk about like the wheel tethers and things like that. Okay, it's one thing to say, let's run these. Ideally, you don't ever need them, but when you do, it's important to have them. And in those instances, when you do, okay, let's say I have that big rollover or something like that, and the next thing wheel breaks off, the tether holds it on. Okay, what do I do next? Do I just mount the next one to the tether, or do I need to do an evaluation of it to make sure that what I have is still holding its integrity?
Yeah. So as of today, the tethers are not, they do not have any kind of date codes on them. So that could, in the future change. where, they have like a lifespan, kind of like a helmet or a driving suit or something. But right now they don't. When people do call in and, they ask about getting them like recertified where they're not really certified yet, the main thing that we tell them is you just need to really look it over. Just take the thing off, make sure it's not has any cuts or any abrasions, or maybe possibly got hot or, a fire or anything like that. But the main thing is just make sure that it's in proper working order, and they are strong. I mean, these things, as long as there's no cuts or, frays or anything like that, they'll last a long time.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of something like that, but that is the other thing when it comes to talking about products like this, especially products that are designed to hold something. When something ultimately fails and it actually gets into use for its intended purpose, how often do you need to know, hey, this instance, this is a one and done. We need to replace this as well as all of the other broken parts that you've had. So, that's an important thing. I mean, obviously, everything you've shown us looks like it's got a lot of integrity and is built very, very well. But, it's great to have it when you need it. You just need to make sure it works again.
Yeah, for sure. You could use our tethers to pull a dump truck out of the ditch. So they're pretty strong. So that's there was another company out there, a friend of our, we're friendly competition, and they made some that were a little smaller and thinner, and they just didn't, they just weren't holding up. So so we decided to stay with the larger diameter, thicker material and things like that. So that is a piece. I mean, we do not want breaking.
Yeah, I see a whole new opportunity now for push trucks and tow trucks at racetracks, just to start stringing a bunch of your tethers together, and there we go. We're all set and we're done. Tell us a little bit about, I know we've talked about some specific products here and everything, but obviously you guys are a great resource to open wheel racing. What are the offerings out there, Eddie?
So here at Motor State Distributing, we carry pretty much almost all of the brands in open wheel racing. So that gives us an opportunity to talk with all the different professional race teams, all the dealers, the actual still race shops. There's still a lot of brick and mortar race shops out there, speed shops that we do deal with. So that helps since we are carrying all the brands, but it also helps because we are talking to the other manufacturers almost every day. So at some point, I might be chatting with, our competitors, but yet we're still friends. So that actually helps, I think, because we are all, the manufacturers out there, we're all in the same boat, I think, when it comes to that. But for MPD specifically, they carry all of the suspension products for dirt cars. But also our big thing now is pavement sprint cars. There was a big resurgence in that now with the new $1 million series, they're calling it. They have the 4 races for the $1 million, which is a really big deal. That kicks off next month down up in Pensacola. So MPD, there was a need to bring that back and to get some of these pavement sprint car parts back for these customers. When it comes to Ti22, our offering is vast. I mean, we pretty much build all the products for a sprint car now. So we're very fortunate. And again, a lot of the products that we build come, we get that request back from the teams or drivers. So we're there. I go to a lot of races and then I talk directly with them. So if there's an issue or if we need to change something, we can do that. We can change on the fly. And but yeah, it's pretty good. Another one of our companies here also is All-Star Performance, which is another one of our companies here under the Motor State umbrella. And again, they make a lot of sprint car parts. And and what I see on the All-Star side is a lot of our non-wing customers really migrate to the All-Star suspension pieces. So it's a really good mix. So we pretty much can handle all of the needs of the sprint car racers, except for Motor State sells engine parts. We don't build engines. But other than that, we can pretty much get you everything you need.
Yeah, I like that, though, especially when you talk about, and I know the manufacturers collaborate with racers, they collaborate with distributors and all of that, but just the way the entire community works together. And then when you talk about new products, I always think to myself, if someone starts asking like, well, how fast is the development cycle and all of that, I always think in this world, really as fast as it needs to be. Because, this may be working great. Everyone's always got their eye on what could improve it, what could make it better. And when it's time for that, that's when the development cycle happens again.
For sure. I mean, it was just a few minutes ago. I had one of our sales guys ask me about a product, and when he was asking me about it, he wanted to see if we had something similar, but really if we changed our product, it's a no-brainer. So we can adapt pretty quickly here.
That's awesome. Eddie, thank you so much. You have me even more excited about heading out to the Las Vegas Dirt Track this weekend to see High Limit. And next time I can catch a World of Outlaws show or even a local show, I'll definitely do that. But great talking to you. Appreciate your participation in race industry now, and look forward to the next time we get to chat.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you, Eddie. And it's so impressive how hands-on you guys are. You're just out there at the tracks talking to the real racers. That's so key. Great presentation. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Thank you very
Please
much.
log on to the platform because you're going to see TI and MPD's racing products and all the Motor State brands online. Next week, we're going to have Risk Taker Racing products. And remember, this platform is out there 365 days a year for buyers to connect with suppliers like yourself. So enjoy it. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Hey, we want to thank you for watching. Now, be sure to like, subscribe, and click on the bell so you're always up to date with the latest racing technology, industry insights, and exclusive content from EPARTRADE. In racing, every second counts. This is EPARTRADE, the premier business-to-business platform for the performance and racing industry. We connect buyers and suppliers 24/7 worldwide. Racing never stops, neither do we. Discover cutting-edge products and services from around the globe, gaining insights from our live platform, daily newsletters, weekly webinar series, and our highly anticipated annual Race Industry Week. EPARTRADE.com. The racing industry, every minute, every day.
ARP, the ultimate fasteners for whatever you build. To get the best performance, always follow ARP's installation instructions included with the product. For the latest torque specs, go to ARPinstructions.com.
You work as hard as your truck, and you have no time for downtime. That's why more truck owners trust Blue Def, America's #1 diesel exhaust fluid brand. Each batch is guaranteed pure, so you can avoid costly repairs caused by inferior DEF. Demand America's best for your truck. Blue Def and Blue Def Platinum. Put trust in your truck.
With roots in the Midwest that date back well before the Model T, Fifth Third Bank has a long history of serving the needs of automotive companies. While much has changed over the years, our passion for helping businesses put cars on the road and on the track has not. Today, we are more committed than ever as a member of SEMA, a founding member of PRI, and a sponsor of multiple race teams across several racing series. Where can we take your business? Fifth Third Bank.
Where will you find Ferrea Racing components? Circle Track, drag racing, and any top race shop. In every form of motorsports competition, our valves and valve train components deliver race-proven design and technology. And we've brought that same performance to our street applications as well. We're backed by 5 decades of experience, an extensive range of off-the-shelf components, and our custom valve department has the fastest turnaround times in the industry. Ferrea Racing components. Stand with us or race against us.
When it comes to pushing the limits of performance, the pros know there's no room for compromise. At Crowder Cams, we don't just engineer camshafts and valve train components, we redefine what power means. Since 1955, Crowder Cams has been the name trusted by racers, engine builders, and gearheads around the globe. Whether you're building a street machine, a dragster, or a track car, Crowder Cams provides the muscle you need to dominate. And with Crowder, victory is within your reach.
Not all trailer cabinets are built for the long road ahead. Aluminum Econo trailer cabinets from C-Tech Manufacturing are engineered to last and ready to ship today. Each Econo cabinet is packed with exclusive features like motion latch drawers and gasket lock countertops, all made under one roof in our Wisconsin headquarters. Shop Econo online today.